The room fell silent the moment the pen touched paper. Not because the deal was small, $5 million sat boldly on the contract, but because of who was holding the pen. A single father in a worn jacket, fingers rough from years of work, signing a marriage agreement that the powerful CEO across the table believed would humiliate him forever. She smiled, already certain she had won. What she didn't know was that this signature was not his surrender. It was the beginning of something that would turn her world upside down. And if you think you know how this ends, stay with him, because the final move he makes will change everything. He had never imagined his life would narrow down to that one room, that one moment. Just 3 years earlier, his world revolved around early mornings, packed lunches, and the soft breathing of his daughter asleep on his chest. When his wife died suddenly, the silence she left behind was heavier than grief. It was responsibility. He became both mother and father overnight, working long shifts, fixing machines others had given up on, and coming home with grease-stained hands that still managed to braid a little girl's hair. People looked at him with pity, sometimes with judgment, but he learned to keep his head down and move forward. Pride didn't pay school fees. Love did. The CEO, on the other hand, lived in a different universe. Her days were filled with glass walls, private elevators, and boardrooms where people waited for her nod before breathing. She had built her empire with ruthless precision, vowing never to be vulnerable again after a past betrayal had nearly destroyed her company. Marriage, to her, was not romance, it was leverage. When her advisors warned her about a looming corporate takeover that could rip control from her hands, she found a solution that was as cold as it was brilliant. A legal marriage contract. $5 million. When she first saw him, she almost laughed. This was the man her legal team had vetted. Quiet, clean record, no powerful connections. A single dad with nothing to lose. Perfect. She spoke to him politely at first, then condescension crept in like a shadow. She explained every clause slowly, as if he wouldn't understand the words. She reminded him more than once that $5 million was more money than he would ever see in his lifetime. Each sentence landed like a small insult, but he said nothing. He thought of his daughter's future, of the nights he counted coins at the kitchen table, of the promise he made to never let her feel small in this world. When she finally slid the contract toward him, she leaned back in her chair, watching. "This is a business arrangement," she said flatly. "Don't confuse it for anything else." He nodded, reading every line carefully. What she didn't notice was how calm he was, how steady his breathing remained. He wasn't intimidated. He was focused. When he signed, the sound of the pen scratching paper felt louder than it should have been. She smirked. In her mind, the poor single dad had just sold his dignity for money. But that night, as he stood alone on his apartment balcony, city lights flickering below, he allowed himself one deep breath. Not relief, resolve. The deal gave her what she needed immediately. It also gave him access, time, and a position no one would ever suspect him of using wisely. He kissed his daughter's forehead as she slept and whispered a promise he intended to keep. This changes everything. The first months of the marriage were exactly what the CEO expected. Public appearances, controlled smiles, carefully staged photos. She treated him like a background detail, someone to stand slightly behind her, someone the media would forget. Board members barely acknowledged him. But he watched. He listened. Years of surviving on the margins had taught him how to read people, how to notice what others missed. He learned the rhythm of her company, the fractures in loyalty, the unspoken fears hiding behind confident faces. Slowly, quietly, he began to act. Not recklessly, strategically. He asked questions that sounded naive but revealed gaps in planning. He suggested ideas that others dismissed at first, only to resurface later when they realized he was right. He never challenged her publicly. He let her believe she was still in control. And that was his greatest strength, patience. Then came the crisis no one saw coming. A leaked report. Investors panicking. The takeover threat returned, stronger and faster than before. The CEO worked around the clock, snapping at staff, refusing help, convinced she could outwork the problem like she always had. One night, exhausted and furious, she lashed out at him, accusing him of being useless, of forgetting his place. She reminded him, cruelly, of where he came from. That was the night he finally spoke. Calmly, without raising his voice, he laid out a plan. Not vague ideas, hard numbers, connections already secured, contingencies prepared weeks in advance. He revealed partnerships he had quietly built, leveraging relationships from his past that she never thought to ask about. He showed her documents proving that he now legally held influence she had underestimated, influence that could either save the company or let it burn. For the first time, she was speechless. The board meeting that followed changed everything. As tensions peaked and voices rose, he stepped forward. Not as the poor single dad, not as the CEO's accessory, but as a man who understood risk, loyalty, and long-term survival better than anyone in the room. He executed the final move flawlessly, blocking the takeover and stabilizing the company in one decisive stroke. She watched him differently after that, not with arrogance, with disbelief, and something dangerously close to respect. In the quiet that followed the storm, she finally asked him why. Why endure the insults? Why stay silent for so long? He answered simply, because power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits until it's undeniable. By the end of the contract term, the $5 million no longer defined him. His daughter's future was secure. His name carried weight. And the CEO, the woman who once belittled him, stood at a crossroads of her own, forced to confront the truth that strength doesn't come from control, but from understanding the people you underestimate. And as he walked away, not needing the deal anymore, one truth lingered in the air like a final lesson. Never judge a person by the moment you meet them, because the quiet ones are often writing an ending you never see coming.